What's going on, everybody? My name is Tomas. This is my comparison between last year's 15-inch baseline MacBook Pro and this year's newly introduced MacBook Pro with Touch Bar. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and hop into this video. First and foremost, and probably most noticeable to me, was the display. Yes, they both have the same resolution, coming in at 2880 by 1800, but the new MacBook Pro has a significantly brighter and more color accurate display, and the 500 nits of brightness is really substantial and noticeable upon comparison between the two. Another difference that may not look like much on paper between comparison of the two is the weight. The new MacBook Pro is a half a pound lighter. Lugging around a half a pound over a device's lifetime does add up, and even though the new MacBook Pro feels more dense, it is significantly lighter. Another pretty prominent difference between the two is the trackpad. The Force Touch trackpad was introduced on the 2015 model, and I really enjoyed using that because you can click anywhere on the trackpad, and the 2016 carries that over as well. One thing that will take a little bit of time to adjust to is the size of it. Every time I wanted to type initially, I was worried about accidentally tapping on the trackpad, but macOS handles palm rejection really well, and I never really had any issues when it came to resting my palms on the trackpad while I was typing. And before we talk about the biggest difference of the 2016 MacBook Pro, the Touch Bar, I do want to talk a little bit about Touch ID and how it has a dual function as a physical power button in case you have to force shut down your laptop. Just know that that Touch ID sensor functions as a physical power button in the case you need to turn on your system or force shutdown. I really like how this now serves a dual purpose and has moved on from the dedicated power button from the 2015 MacBook Pro. I really enjoy the capability of utilizing biometrics to access my system and certain documents and pay for things and all types of stuff. And probably the most noticeable and differentiating feature of the 2016 MacBook Pro is the Touch Bar. It is a fantastic idea that will take some time to mature and allow app developers to utilize it appropriately. One thing that I have noticed is that it has slowed down my workflow because I'm looking more at my keyboard rather than on my screen. It hasn't added value just yet, but that will take time for me to adjust to, in addition to having app developers take full advantage of that space. Looking down at my keyboard is something that I have never really done before, and now I have this whole space that I need to pay attention to that is added functionality if an app is taking advantage of it appropriately. Now I just need to get over the learning curve of having that available there and maybe make some adjustments to customize it and place things where I think that they would work best for me. But again, for now, it is just a really nice addition, and I can see it going really far if it is used appropriately within certain applications. Another big difference that I am really excited about and have been happy to just embrace is the keyboard. The Butterfly 2 switch has been revised from the MacBook, which I liked initially, and has just been made better. I can really get into typing, and it's a comfortable experience for me. And in addition to having individual LED lights dedicated to each key, now I no longer have the bleed through that the chiclet style keyboard on the previous version of the MacBook Pro had, and I like that. And the last thing that I have on my list of physical comparisons between last year's MacBook Pro and this new version is probably the most controversial item on my list, and it is the ports. For me, I'm really buying into this idea of multifunctional ports. Now I have 4 ports that can take on the shape of all the ports that are single service on my 2015 MacBook Pro and implement appropriately. I can power them, I can display through them, I can transfer data through them all at the same time. Now I have a big issue with the removal of the micro SD card slot because that was the port that I used the most often, probably the only port that I used. CPUs, minus the MagSafe. Now, I've had some time to think about it, and I'm kind of excited for the potential that this kind of design has for us in the future. Initially, it's going to be a hard adjustment and an additional cost to an already expensive laptop, but I'm willing to buy into that idea of moving it forward. Now that we've compared the physical differences between last year's model of MacBook Pro and this year's newly designed MacBook Pro, let's go ahead and hop into some performance testing of the two. I'm going to run through some system applications for benchmarking, in addition to rendering and exporting some projects that are equally the same on both systems. As we hop into that, my 2015 MacBook Pro is the baseline, 2.2 gigahertz with a quad-core i7 processor with capabilities to turbo boost up to 3.4 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of 1600 megahertz RAM, and a 512 gigabyte SSD. This baseline model does not have any discrete graphics card and only is powered by Intel's Iris Pro. The 2016 MacBook Pro that I have here is of the baseline configuration, which is 2.6 gigahertz quad-core i7 with capabilities to turbo boost up to 3.5 gigahertz, 16 gigabytes of 2133 megahertz RAM. This baseline model has Intel's HD Graphics 530 paired with a Radeon Pro 450 graphics card that has 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 RAM and the capability of automatic graphics switching between the two. And this baseline model only has 256 gigabytes of SSD storage available. All right, so the first benchmarking software we're going to take a look at is Cinebench, and the measurements more specifically of how OpenGL and the CPU perform on each of these models. The 2015 pulled in a 31.28 on OpenGL, and to no surprise, the 2016 pulled in a 71.87. And in the CPU measurements, the 2015 pulled in a 538 CB and the 2016 pulled in a 654 CB. On to disk read and write performances of each of these systems. The 2015 is no slouch when it comes to write performance. Now the read speeds is where it gets decimated, almost in excess of 1000 megabytes per second. On to Geekbench 4 is where it gets interesting when we compare these two models because of the clock speed of the CPUs. The single core score between the 2015 and 2016 models are significantly separated. However, when we measure the multi-core score, they are closer in proximity because of the turbo boost capabilities of each of the CPUs. The 2015 is capable of turbo boosting up to 3.4 gigahertz and the 2016 3.5 gigahertz. So that slim line of difference is why the multi-core scores are so close to each other. Now, everybody and their dog knows that Macintosh computers cannot game, so I thought it'd be kind of interesting to test how these systems perform utilizing the Heaven benchmarking tool. The 2015 came in a measly 5 to 13 frames per second. The 2016 did a little better with 11 to 21. Still absolutely horrendous and unusable in my opinion. The temperatures ran a little cooler on the 2015 version, which probably had a lot to do with why the FPS was much lower. Now to get into some practical testing of each of these systems, I wanted to test how each of these systems handled a render in Adobe Premiere Pro CC 2017. And because there are two different renderers available to me, I wanted to test OpenGL and Apple's Metal. And also with these renders, I wanted to see how the battery performance held up while I was conducting them. And the reason behind this is that the 2016 MacBook Pro has a 76 watt hour battery. That's down 23 watt hours in comparison to the 2015 version. That was concerning to me initially until I ran these tests. The project that I rendered was 4 minutes in length and had 7 layers of video to it. It had elements of After Effects direct linked in it, adjustment layers for color correction attached to specific clips, a plethora of transitions, and a ton of rendered text. So to me, this was a really accurate test between the two systems. As you can see on the screen, the 2015 MacBook Pro didn't perform very well, coming in at a 19 minutes total render time, and when that 19 minutes was finished, I had 77% battery left, and that's down from 100. I charged the battery back up to 100% and ran the render in Metal, and that came in at around the same time with less percentage of battery. The 2016 did significantly better, completing the render in 11 minutes and 18 seconds with 93% battery left. The Metal render performed a little bit worse, but came in at around the same amount of time and also didn't drop the battery more than 10%. Now I can attribute the battery drainage to multiple cycles on the older MacBook Pro and the 2016 being a brand new battery. To finish up my testing, I exported those previous renders using Adobe Media Encoder, both OpenGL and Metal renders, to help with those exports to see how they stood up to each other. The 2015 really didn't hold a candle to the 2016 version. I utilized YouTube's preset within Adobe Media Encoder, and that's a 4K preset with a bit rate of 40 megabits per second. Each of the tests show that the 2015 version is about 10 minutes slower in both export tests. Now that we're done looking at the performance of the CPU and GPU between the two systems, let's take a listen to the speakers. Now that we've taken a closer look at those numbers, I want to talk about pricing. And that's been kind of an item of concern for consumers, especially with the high price of the 13-inch model. To me, the 13-inch models of the MacBook Pro are just not worth it. But I will say that the pricing of the 15-inch models are kind of on par, and I'll tell you why. If you look at past MacBook Pros, they were priced at, what, $2,000 at the time of purchase without building to order, without discrete graphics. So to me, the pricing is fair considering that you're getting a 2 gigabyte discrete graphics card embedded in your 15-inch MacBook Pro. Now, I do join that group of people that are kind of up in arms about the pricing of the 13-inch MacBook Pro, because that entry-level model at $1,500 is just insane. You don't get anything. The value for money on that is just nothing. Even if you were to spec out a 13-inch MacBook Pro, you're still limited to not having discrete graphics in those systems, and you're paying a pretty penny at that. So to me, the best value for money, I know it's a bigger system, but it would be the baseline 15-inch MacBook Pro. And while we're on the topic of cost, let's talk about where you can save some money. B&H has some really awesome deals on both of these versions of MacBook Pro. And why would you shop at B&H, you may ask? Well, you can save on tax if you're outside of the state of New York. And tax can be anywhere between $200 and $400 depending on how you're building your system with Apple. And to me, that's a huge savings. To order from B&H, you pay MSRP. So if you're interested in seeing current pricing and availability for both of these models that were compared in this video, hit the links in the description. Even though the 2015 MacBook Pro is on its way out, you can score a really nice system for a great price, especially right now. Before I get out of here, and if you still have anxiety of jumping over to the new MacBook Pro because you're worried about that dongle life, my main man Larry Dickerson, aka Geeky Nerd Dad, did a fantastic video on why this move by Apple is a good thing. I'll link you to his video in the description and also with a card. Check it out up there. Well, that about does it for me in this one. If you like this video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. If not, hit the other one. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I am Tomas, and I'll catch you in the next one.